Welcome into another Soccer Down Here 1v1, this time previewing the upcoming fall season for Oglethorpe University. My name's Jason Longshore, and you've heard Jon Akin with us multiple times, but it's good to catch up ahead of the 2019 season. Jon, how you doing?
Doing well, Jason. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, anytime. I'm excited to be back calling Oglethorpe games. I had a blast last year. It was such a fun team to watch. Give us your thoughts now that you're months away. I know the disappointment of not getting into the NCAA tournament, but looking back on it now, what stands out to you about the 2018 season?
2018 was a great year, to be honest with you. Starting the season 1 and 2, we had so many new faces. Quite a few Division I transfers, quite a few new impact freshmen. Last year was about gelling together, and after going 1 and 2, we didn't lose a game the rest of the year. And then I think we were figuring things out, but we were still doing it at a really high level. And unfortunately, due to a committee vote, we were in a tie and going out on penalties at the end of our conference tournament. We were on the outside looking in, and I thought clearly we were one of the best teams in the country. But those things happen from time to time. So I think we spent last year, even though we operated at a high level, learning about ourselves and getting a lot of those new, very good players to buy into what we do and how we play. And I think, it was almost like a big, long preseason for this year.
Give us a Cliff's Notes version for people who are looking for college teams to follow in the metro area. A Cliff's Notes version of your philosophy and how you want your team to play.
The philosophy is, very similar to some of the great brands around the world, possession oriented. We don't philosophically just look for the biggest, strongest, fastest athletes. We look for guys that have really good soccer IQs, guys that have understandings of the game, guys that are technical. And more often than not, when you get a group of guys around there that understand the game, they can overcome a lot of, bigger, stronger, faster teams because, that's what's great about soccer is it's not a strength contest. It's about insight. It's about, guile. It's about, reading situations 2 and 3 plays ahead. And I think that coincides with, a great academic institution like Oglethorpe. So we look for those players, and I think they thrive here. Believe it or not, it's my 18th year here as in the program, 17th year as a head coach. And I think we've kind of got a system down now where we're identifying those, sophomores, juniors, and seniors who will be good fits for us. And now, believe it or not, they're kind of searching, us out as much as we're searching them out, which didn't happen early in our tenure here, trying to establish an identity.
How difficult is it to get to that point? We talk about it a lot when you look at coaching changes at the professional level, and it feels like teams struggle to create that identity now. Like you said, you've got high school coaches and players and club coaches out there who know how your teams play and know, okay, I have a player who would fit perfect here. Let me call Jon up. How difficult is it to establish that, and how difficult is it to stick with that when maybe the results aren't quite there at the beginning?
Yeah, I think, it takes time. I mean, honestly, that's the only constant that I could, affirm in that recipe. And, very early in my career, it was really one recruiting cycle, and we took a losing record into tying the school record for wins. And we had a very good team early in my career there. Here at Oglethorpe. But it took a much longer period of time to establish a very healthy, dominant program. I think those are two different terms. And I think it takes time. I mean, that's really the one, like I said, the one constant, and there's no way around it. Only when you've been around close to 20 years is it where some of your former players are now good club coaches and high school coaches and say, hey, I had a great experience, and I've got a kid who would be good for you. And then again, the success of the last 7 or 8 years where we're constantly winning championships and things like that. Do the people that we don't have the personal connections with say, oh, well, I've seen your team play and, I've heard good things. I mean, the one thing that I've been really proud of over the years is, not only do they look for our type of players, but they know that if we're recruiting a kid and we're bringing them in, they're going to be respected as a person as much as a player. And I think that's the cool, pure thing about Division III is it's not about a money thing. It's about the right fit. And then, if we get the soccer side of the things on their end and our end right, it's usually a home run and a good experience for 4 years.
Yeah, I think people might have preconceptions about Division III and what the level's like and how good is it. And that was something that, as I saw, not just Oglethorpe, but the other teams in the conference and on the schedule, I was pleasantly surprised at the overall level. It's had to have improved over the years just as the game has grown, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's to give you some concrete information. We just played Mercer on Monday night, and we lost 3-2 in a very competitive game, and they're the Southern Conference champs at their place after 4 days of practice. And they're a fully funded Division I program. So there are some Division III teams that can compete at that level, and I'm proud to say we're one of those. And we lost to them 4-2 in the spring, and they're a good team. Early there was the haves and the have-nots. I mean, there were a few programs that could compete at a very high level, and then there were a lot of programs that couldn't. And it's just they've gotten stronger across the board. And I'm proud to say that we've gotten a lot stronger too, which is great.
So let's take a look at the conference, the SAA this season. Who are the contenders you're looking at around the league?
I think Center traditionally, despite having an opposing soccer philosophy, they're physical, they're strong, they make the game ugly. And no matter how good you are, when teams do that, those are hard fought contests against athletes. Our in-state rival Barry is always good and competitive. I forgot how they finished last year, but we've played them in the semifinals a couple years in a row. Rhodes might be close. I think they graduated a decent senior class. And then a lot's kind of, we'll have to wait and see. There's so many things, that happen that we're unaware of because we're so geographically spread out.
Sure.
We've got teams in Hendricks in Arkansas and Millsaps in Mississippi and, Birmingham Southern. I think they've all picked up a couple players here and there, but we'll just have to find out when we face them this year.
How much of a challenge are some of those road trips in the conference?
The long one is the Hendricks road trip. That's about 10 hours. We play Rhodes and Hendricks, so Memphis is about 6.5 hours, and you turn around and do another 3-hour leg to Hendricks. Those can be pretty taxing, depending on how which rotation it is, and do you play Hendricks first or second? In the second game of a weekend, I don't care, what it is. They're just those are tough contests. Just you leave on a Thursday and you're playing on a Sunday afternoon. It's you've been away from home that long, and had homework and tests and been in a bus for long stretches. Those are hard to come out and be your best, but that's part of the gig.
And for a team that plays the style that you guys do, where it is a high-tempo style at times, and it can wear teams down, something that I picked up on straight away last year was how willing you are to introduce new faces and introduce freshmen in big spots and in important spots. What's the incoming class looking like this year for you?
Very good. We had a lot of key guys. We have some very good incoming freshmen from some talented clubs locally, and we've got some guys that, even though we returned 7 key players, 7 seniors, From what we've seen in preseason, I mean, we have 4 or 5 guys that if we had key injuries in those seniors, I would feel completely confident that they could get the job done. I think it's scary enough, even though we have 7 Division I transfers in our team. I think our starting point with these freshmen is actually at a higher point than maybe those kids were their freshman year, which is progress, and it's exciting to see.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the goals are probably pretty obvious this year. It's conference title, it's conference tournament title, and it's getting back to the NCAA tournament. How much does that drive you about the NCAA tournament? I know how frustrating it was last year, and kind of changing that perception about the conference and the Division III game in the South overall.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly hamstrung by geography down here. In New England, you've got Division III teams every 2, 3, 10 miles, and here we've got long stretches. So it's hard for us to go get really high level, meaningful games to enhance our strength of schedule outside of our conference play. But we've got some great ones lined up. We're playing a couple California schools early in the Emory tournament. We've got Emory, which is always a competitive game. We're going up to Virginia to play W&L and Lynchburg, 2 strong teams, and those are games that we have to just get out there and show them who we are. I think that the tide is turning, but we try not to leave it up to committee vote anymore. We try to just create our own destiny with results and just keep it one game at a time. And I think we have enough talent and if we're lucky enough to stay healthy and, the belief in the team that we've got something to prove, I think we'll be okay.
So you mentioned Emory, and this is something that we've been talking about a little bit. When you go back into the history books, Emory was the first to introduce varsity soccer in the late 50s, and Oglethorpe was right there just a couple of years later. If this isn't one of the longest-running rivalries in the South, it definitely is in the state of Georgia. How competitive is that match every year?
I'm proud to say that for about 50 years it wasn't competitive, but since 2011 it has been extremely competitive. There have been stretches of us taking it. I think it was about 49 years without a win for Oglethorpe. And then since 2011, I think we've had a majority of the wins since then. So it's one of those games. It's 6 miles away, but you'd think it's a World Cup final. We're two very good academic schools, 2 very different schools. And I'm proud to say over the last decade, it's become a very, very competitive game that could go either way. This is 2 years in a row we've beaten them, and we're going for the first time to ever beat them 3 times in a row. So,
looks like this is the renewal of a rivalry that started in 1961 on November the 3rd, and this year it's the first game after the Sonny Carter Invitational on Friday, September 6th, and it's kind of a focal point on the schedule for you. I know you're inviting back a lot of the old alumni. It's almost like a homecoming in a lot of ways.
It is. I mean, we have Oglethorpe and Emory have so many graduates that remain around the metropolitan area, and it's an easy one for them to come out and watch, and it's something to celebrate. I mean, rivalry games are always more meaningful, and there's so much history behind it. And it's funny. I was moving in, helping some of the freshmen move in, and a dad came over to me who was moving his son in or daughter, and said, "Oh, I played college soccer at Emory," and I'm like, "Oh, well, wow." And he said, "I didn't even know that Oglethorpe had a team back in the day or whatever." And I said, "Well, you need to come watch this one." And he said, "Absolutely, he'll be there because he knows the history between the schools and things like that." And so that was pretty fun. But I think for years we had a group of alums who just said, man, they were almost good enough to beat them, and now we're doing it. So I think it's a point of pride, and the game can go either way. They're strong, but I think it's very different philosophies about how to play the game as well. And I think that's an enjoyable undertone to the long almost 60-year rivalry we've got going.
Yeah, you mentioned that with center and with Emory as well. Both play the game in a different way. They have a different mindset of how they want to approach it and what they're looking for out of the match. How do you manage keeping your players focused and true to playing in the Oglethorpe way?
I think we do it every day. We identify those players in the recruiting process who are used to that style of play. We train that way every day, and we hope that we continue to ingrain those habits in them. And then when you go into a pressure situation, it's just, it's habitual. It's they're reacting in the only way that they really know. So it's just kind of in lockstep with where they've come from, and hopefully we teach them an even higher level. And then it's what we do every day in training. So, in those really difficult situations, they try to remain in the moment. They try to remain true to their identity. And we believe that if you do it really well, it doesn't matter who you're playing, you can come out on top.
So you mentioned playing Mercer just a couple of days ago in preseason, and I know it's hard to keep an eye on everybody in the state, but is it just me, or does it feel like the college game in the state of Georgia is healthier than it's ever been?
I think it is. I think Georgia State's just they've done really well the last few years. Mercer, Georgia State, are two very strong Division I programs, and they've got their own healthy rivalry going. Clayton State at the Division II level is always strong and recruits a certain style player. Georgia Gwinnett, another a completely kind of different team as well in the NAIA mold, and then you got Oglethorpe and Emory in the metropolitan area. So Life College just started their program again. And I think it's thriving. I think it really goes to the fact that there's so many good youth players in Atlanta. I mean, the youth game is strong, and I think Emory's been there. Oglethorpe, we've come on really, really strong in the last 10 years. There have been a lot of national success with the Mercers and the Georgia States recently. Clayton State's always been strong, and Georgia Gwinnett's always a powerhouse in the NAI realm. And I think there's just a lot of healthy places for those kids to stay. And I think the other thing is, I think more so than 15 years ago, kids are saying, "Hey, Atlanta, I don't need to leave Atlanta." And I think some kids always want to go a little bit further from home, but I'm seeing more and more say, I think I've found everything that I need and want close by. So that's been a unique trend. I mean, if you look at, certainly our roster, we do have diversity. We have kids from Utah and kids from New Mexico and New York and things like that, but most of our kids are Georgia kids, and you don't have to go far to find good soccer players around the city.
The local kids that are developing, it feels like just the overall level of the game has risen in Georgia, and a lot of that's down to the coaching. The coaching education from the state of Georgia has been better than we've seen in a number of years. What are the important things that you look at when you're going out to look at players, whether it's in a high school match or at the youth side? What are the key elements you look for when you walk up to a match and you're starting to scout?
Obviously, it's a different format between, club and high school, but there are a lot of good coaches, around the city. And, you try to go for the highest level, competitive game that you could see, because there's an intensity there that we replicated at the college level. Obviously athleticism is a component, but what type of understanding does the player have? Sometimes it's easier to see that when you are evaluating a game in which a coach, at least their team, or ideally both teams, are playing in the same style. So it's easy to see that. It's a little harder to see that in a format where it's a little bit of a ping pong game and, the ball's not down there where you can see a kid read those moments. So I think it goes back to kind of what I started with a little bit earlier, is looking for those cerebral type players, that are kind of, that recognize the nuances of soccer and are thinking at a 1 and 2 touch level, showing their flair when they can, but recognizing those key moments. And it's a combination. I always like to try to say that we recruit the best combination of soccer player / athlete that we can, that wants to, have us as a home for 4 years, and that fits our academic mold as well. They might be a little more athletic and, or a little more soccer but I think that those are the kind of key players that we look for. And there are a lot of them around here. I mean, you see, a lot of schools in the ACC, arguably the top, college conference in the country, they come in here all day long, and there's still so many good players left standing at the end of it that we can pick up great players as well.
I want to finish up with this one. So parents who have kids who are, middle school and younger, not quite to the point that they're thinking, okay, where am I going to go play in college, and is that something I want to do? But you want to have your kids be as good of a player as they can be. What advice would you give?
I think you're leading into us to our next 1v1 conversation, because that might take another hour on the landscape of the youth soccer scene. But I would if I'm talking directly to parents, I would say, de-emphasize the label of where your kid plays, because the acronym that goes associated with the league that they're in doesn't necessarily equal the level. The label doesn't equal the level. And we have an unbelievable player. I mean, he's probably going to be a 3-year starter. He's a little banged up at the moment, but he was at a lower tier level, whatever that essentially means. And there was never a lot of college coaches around at his games, and he is big time. I mean, he's the kind of guy that potentially I could see as a professional down the road, and he's just. I mean, nobody really showed him the time of day. And I think, I say that because parents are so often caught up in, is it DA, is it ECNL? And those things do not equate to, if you're generalizing, those are good standards, but there's not always a direct pathway. And I would argue that parents should really focus on the love for the game more than anything else. Are you de-emphasizing results, highlighting their passion for the game, highlighting the technical abilities that they might be able to have, because it's so unpredictable to see at anybody really under 13 and 14 years old, even 14 and 15, do they have the commitment level to be left standing when the colleges are thinking like that. And the opposite is true. I've seen so many parents push with the end in mind, and you actually push the love for the game out of them. And that's really what's going to carry a kid to play for 15, 16, 17 years, through a college career, and possibly consider, the professional abilities. Less is more at those early ages, and the kids with the most passion are going to be the ones that are really going to be left standing at the end of the youth development process. So I would really focus on asking key questions, exposing them to great things like Atlanta United and pro environments, and going to watch live college soccer, and talking about the game on TV as it's so prevalent nowadays. But really, encouraging free play, unorganized soccer as much as possible, and leave the organized side of it to, to experience other sports young in their career. I think that's key for long-term love for the game.
Well, it's something I've mentioned a bunch of times, and if you're in the Atlanta area and you're looking to see good soccer, and look, we all define good soccer in a lot of different ways, and my definition of it the way that you have your teams play. It's good soccer for anybody who's coming out to watch it and enjoy it. That gets started on August 30th in the Sonny Carter Invitational at 1 o'clock on a Friday against Claremont, then Pomona Pitzer on Sunday the 1st. But the big one is Oglethorpe and Emory, Friday, September 6th, 7 o'clock over on Emory's campus. Can't wait to get the season started.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I'd like to highlight that I'm pretty sure it's free admission over there too. So, and we've got plenty more home games right here in Brookhaven for those local listeners that want to get their fix as well. So, Jason, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Anytime. And if you can't make it out, we will be blasting out the streams where you can watch the home matches and listen to myself and Jessica Sharman joining in on commentary this year. It's going to be a lot of fun broadcasting Oglethorpe soccer. Jon, thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Have a great week.